Hi, everybody. This is Allison from Alleycat Creations. How are you? Please like, share, and subscribe to my channel if you have yet to do so already. And if you get anything from my work, explosion, a new book to read, a new author to explore, chickens to explore. Oh, I hate this camera. Artwork to make. Please consider supporting my work. All the links are at the bottom of the description. Alleycatcreations211.com is where you can find my artwork. You can view it. Almost done with flamingos. Um, Paintings, hyper-realistic drawings, pyramids, skulls, business card holders. I make lots of fun, different types of signs. Um, a whole plethora of stuff. Go check it out. And if you're interested in any of it, please email me. That's how I keep alive right now. The last thing is 3D memberships. That's where you are supporting this channel directly. And because of you guys doing that, I do channel only member brain dyslexia, channel member only content, and I do oracle cards for everybody. And it's not tarot, it's just helping you see and question and expand your consciousness in the things that you might need to heal or you haven't looked at and you need to tackle in your spiritual journey. And I do raffles once a month and I do giveaways. So people have won pyramids and gem skulls and paintings and signs. So check me out. Today we're going to do a Blavatsky read. We're going to go on stanza 12. I think is it 12? 12. 12. Um, and this is probably prolific and divine timing. But I do want to let everybody know that does watch me. The last 2 weeks, I've had catastrophic plumbing issues that has been making things really difficult to get like this stuff done. Um, I had a catastrophic flood 2 weeks ago, and then a week later, another one. And then the AC is leaking, and I found that I have another crack in the foundation on the side of my house. My whole bedroom is like water. So I've been pulling up water the last 2 days. It's finally getting moist. But I've been having like if life could throw you the kitchen sink, this is a repeat of New York. It's hitting me hard. And Little Thor hasn't been showing up. So there's like I'm at my collapse point. Like about to really like disappear. It, I'm trying not to. I'm trying to alchemize and change my mindset. But without income and without a job and no one wants to hire me, if anybody out there, I'm trying to attract it without trying to draw it, force it on anybody. But if anybody knows somebody that can get me a full-time salaried position that makes an actual amount of money that I don't have to worry anymore and I don't have to bitch and complain, that'd be fantastic because I'm not finding anything. It's I'm annoying myself at this point, but I'm doing this alone. I wish I had somebody here to help me at least clean up. And it's a burden beyond belief. Chicken. So I just want to let you guys know that I'm not going out and partying. I wish I was, but I am under a lot of stress. I'm under a lot of pressure to figure it out, and nothing's coming into my direction. So I want to put it out here. I need something better. I need something that's substantial, that I can use my skills and that I'll be appreciated for what I'm doing. Um, I need something, a door to open up. I'm a really hard worker, and I don't know what to do anymore with my life. I'm done. So we're gonna rant over the fifth race and its divine instructors. So yeah, I guess everything has its divine timing. We need to hear this now. I'm excited. The remnants of the first two races disappear forever. Groups of the various Atlantean races saved from the deluge, along with the forefathers of the fifth. The origins of our present race, the fifth. The first divine dynasties, the earliest glimmerings in history, now pin to the allegorical chronology of the Bible and the universal history slavishly following it, the nature of the first instructors and civilizers of mankind. Few men remained, some yellow, some brown and black, and some red remained. The moon-colored of the primitive divine stock were gone forever. The fifth race produced from the holy stock remained. It was ruled by her first divine kings. The serpents who redescended, who made peace with the fifth race, who taught and instructed it. This verse, 47, related to the fifth race, history does not begin with it, but living and ever-recurring tradition does. History, or what is called history, does not go further back than the fantastic origins of our fifth sub-race, a few thousands of years of 2,000 years. It is the subdivisions of the first subrace of the fifth root race, which are referred to in the sentence, some yellow, some brown and black, some red remained. The moon colored. The first and second races were gone forever, without leaving any traces whatever, and that so far back as the third deluge of the third Lemurian race, that great dragon whose tail sweeps whole nations out of existence in the twinkling of an eye. And this is the true meaning of the verse in the commentary, which says, the great dragon has respect but for the serpents of wisdom, the serpents whose holes are now under the triangular stones, the pyramids at the four corners of the world. This tells us clearly that which is mentioned more than once elsewhere in the commentaries, namely, that the adepts or wise men of the three races, the third, fourth, and the fifth, dwelt in subterranean habitats, generally under some kind of pyramidal structure, if not actually under a pyramid. For such pyramids existed in the four corners of the world and were never the monopoly of the land of the pharaohs, though until found scattered all over the two Americas, under and overground. Under and overground, beneath and amidst virgin forests, as in Plain Vale, they were supposed to be the exclusive property of Egypt. If the true geometrically correct pyramids are no longer found in European regions, many of the supposed early Neolithic caves of the colossal triangular pyramidal and concaval menhirs in the Mohabian and Brittany, generally many of the Danish tumuli, and even of the giant tombs of Sardinia, with their inseparable companions, the Narahi, are so many more or less clumsy copies of the pyramids. Most of these were the works of the first settlers on the newly born continent and isles of Europe. The same yellow, some brown and black and some red races that remained after the submersion of the last Atlantean continents and islands 850,000 years ago, with the exception of Pluto's Atlantean island and before the arrival of the great Aryan races, while others were built by the earliest immigrants from the East. Those who can hardly accept the antiquity of the human race so far back as the 57,000 years assigned by Dr. Dowler to the skeleton found by him in New Orleans on the banks of the Mississippi will, of course, reject these facts, but they may find themselves mistaken someday. It is the foolish self-glorification of the Arcadians, who styled themselves older than the moon, and of the people of Attica, who claim that they had existed before the sun appeared in heaven, that we may disparage not their undeniable antiquity. Nor can we laugh at the universal belief that we had giant ancestors. The fact that the bones of the mammoth and the mastodon, and in one case, those of gigantic salamander, have been mistaken for human bones does not make away with the difficulty that of all the mammalians, man is the only one whom science will not allow to have dwarfed down, like all other animal frames, from the giant Homo duili to the creatures between 5 and 6 feet that he is now. I'm going to put a little caveat pause here. Postulate. In quantum mechanics and the many worlds interpretation thereof, we look at the Mayans and ask, where did they go? What happened to them? And some spiritual people will say, well, they ascended. Well, as much as we want to claim that Atlantis did have deluge and did sink, could there have also been a potentiality, possibility that it also too ascended? That Earth is also going through multiple changes and it does continuously change constantly. That might have been something that took place in Atlantis is actually the transcension and ascension of some of it. Doesn't all have to be going, but where did the Mayans go? It's a speculation, it's a postulate, but you could say the same for Lemuria and Tartaria and the mud floods and all other paradigms that had a past that now we have remnants of, but not necessarily artifacts. Or are they being hidden? I mean, if anybody goes to New York and some of these other older cities, and how are things in the, like, down there in the ground? But why? There's a lot of speculation, but it's good speculation. It's good to think and ponder these things. So that made me ponder a bit about why Plato's island did not sink, and why some of the remnants of Lemuria and Atlantis stayed. And this begs to differ with the pyramids that people are finding all around the world that have been hidden or now being discovered by sonar and radar. There's a lot of questions that are unanswered, but it's good postulates. It's good conjuring of ponderings of information. But the serpents of wisdom have preserved their records well, and the history of the human evolution is traced in heaven as it is traced on underground walls. Humanity and the stars are bound together indissolubly because of the intelligences that rule the latter. Modern symbologists may scoff at this and call it fancy, but it is unquestionable that the deluge has ever been associated in the legends of some Eastern peoples, not only the pyramids, but also with the constellations, writes Mr. Stalilan Wake. The Great Pyramid, The old dragon is identical with the Great Flood, says Mr. Proctor in Knowledge, Volume 1. We know that in the past, the constellation of the dragon was at the pole or boss of the celestial sphere. In stellar temples, the dragon would be the uppermost or ruling constellation. It is singular how close the constellations correspond in sequence in range of the right ascension with the events recorded respecting the biblical flood. The reasons for this singularity have been made clear in this work, but it shows only that there were several deluges mixed up in the memories and traditions of the sub-races of the fifth race. The first great flood was the astronomical and cosmical, while several others were terrestrial. Yet this does not prevent our very learned friend, Mr. Gerald Massey, uninitiate truly in the mysteries of the British Museum, still only a self-initiate, from declaring and insisting that the Atlantean submersion and deluge were only the anthropomorphized fancies of ignorant people, and that Atlantis was no better than an astronomical allegory. Nevertheless, the great zodiacal allegory is based upon historical events, and one can hardly interfere with that and the other. And it stands also to reason that every student of occultism knows what that astronomical and zodiacal allegory means. Smith shows in the Nimrod epic of the Assyrian tablets the real meaning of it. Its 12 canons refer to the annual course of the sun through the 12 months of the year. Each tablet answers to a special month and contains a distinct reference to the animal forms and the signs of the zodiac. The 11th canto, being consecrated to Rimian, the god of storms and of rain, and harmonizes with the 11th sign of the zodiac, Aquarius, or the Waterman, 19th century, 1882. But even this is preceded in the old records by the pre-astronomical cosmic flood, which became allegoricized and symbolized in the above zodiacal or Noah's flood. But this has nothing to do with that Atlantis. The pyramids are closely connected with the ideas of both the great dragon, the constellation, the dragons of wisdom, of the great initiates of the third and fourth races, and the floods of the Nile, regarded as a divine reminder of the great Atlantic flood. The astronomical records of universal history, however, are said to have had their beginnings with the third sub-race of the fourth root race, or the Atlanteans. When was it? Occult data show that even since the time of the regular establishment of the zodiacal calculations in Egypt, the poles have been thrice inverted. We will presently return once more to the statement such symbols are represented by the signs of the zodiac, a fact which offers a handle to the materialists upon which to hang their one-sided theories and opinions, have too profound a signification, and their bearing upon our humanity is too important to suffer dismissal in a few words. Meanwhile, we have to consider the meaning of that other statement, which mentions the first divine kings who are said to have rescinded, guided, and instructed our fifth race after the last deluge. We shall consider the last claim historically in the sections that follow, but must end with a few more details on the subject of the serpents. The rough commentaries on the archaic stanzas have to end here. Further elucidation requires proofs obtained from ancient, medieval, and modern works that have treated all of these subjects. All such evidence has now been gathered in, collated, and brought together in better order, so as to compel the addition of the reader to the wealth of the historical proofs. And as a manifold meaning of the weird symbol, so often referred to as suggestive of temper of man in the orthodox light of the church, can never be too strong insisted upon, it seems more advisable to exhaust the subject by every available proof at this juncture, even as the risk of repetition. The Titans and Cabres have been invariably made out by our theologians and some pious symbologists as indissoluble connected with the grotesque personages called devil, and every proof to the contrary has been here too, as invariably rejected and ignored. Therefore, the occultist must neglect nothing which may tend to defeat the conspiracy of slander. It is proposed to divide the subjects involved in these three last verses in several groups and examine them in the final chapter as carefully and as fully as space permits. A few more details may thus be added to the general evidences of antiquity on the most disputed tenets of occultism and the esoteric doctrine, the bulk of which will be found in part 2 on symbology. Serpents and dragons under different symbolisms. The name of the dragon in Chaldea was not written phonetically, but was represented by two monograms, probably meaning, according to the Orientalists, the scaly one. The description very pertinently, remarks G. Smith, of course might apply either to a fabulous dragon, a serpent, or a fish. And we may add, it applies in one case to Makara, the 10th zodiacal sign, meaning in Sanskrit a nondescript amphibious animal, generally called crocodile, and really signifying something else. The mysteries of the Hebdomad. This then is a virtual admission that the Assyriologists, at all events, know nothing certain as to the status of the dragon in ancient Chaldea, whence the Hebrews got their symbolism, only to be afterwards robbed of it by the Christians, who made of the scaly one a living entity and a maleficent power. The specimen of dragons, winged and scaled, may be seen in the British Museum, representing the events of the fall according to the same authority. There are also two figures sitting on each side of a tree and holding out their hands to the apple, while at the back of the tree is a serpent dragon. Esoterically, the two figures are two Chaldees ready for initiation, the serpent symbolizing the initiator, while the jealous god who cursed the three are the exoteric profane clergy. Not much of the literal biblical event there are, as any occultist can see. The great dragon has respect, but the serpents of wisdom, says the stanza, thus proving the correctness of our explanation of the two figures in the serpent. The serpents who redescended, who taught and instructed the fifth race. What sane man is capable of believing in our day that the real serpents are hereby meant? Hence the rough guess now become almost an axiom with the men of science, that those who wrote in antiquity upon various sacred dragons and serpents either were superstitious and credulous people, or who were bent upon deceiving those more ignorant than themselves. Yet from Homer downwards, the term implied something hidden from the profane. Terrible are the gods when they manifest themselves, those gods whom men call dragons. Annihilus, treating in his De Nutria Animinium of these Ophidian symbols, makes certain remarks which show that he understood well the nature of those most ancient symbols. Those he most permanently explains with regard to the above Homeric verse, for the dragon, while sacrificed and to be worshipped, has within himself something still more of the divine nature, of which it is better for others to remain in ignorance. This dragon, having a supplementary meaning, the highest and the lowest may be given. The former is identical with the self-born, the Logos, the Hindu Aja. He was the second person of the Trinity, the Son, with the Christian Gnostics called the Nasenians, or serpent worshippers. His symbol was the constellation of the dragon. its seventh star are the seven stars held in the hand of the Alpha and Omega in Revelation. It is most terrestrial, meaning the term dragon was applied to the wise man. This portion of the religious symbolism of antiquity is very abstruse and mysterious and may remain incomprehensible to the profane. In our modern day, it so jars on the Christian ear that it can hardly escape, all civilization notwithstanding, being regarded as a direct denunciation of the most cherished Christian dogmas, the subject of which required, to do its justice, the pen and genius of Milton, whose poetical fiction has now taken root in the church as a revealed dogma. Did the allegory of the dragon and his supposed conqueror in heaven originate with St. John and in his revelation? Emphatically, we answer no. His dragon is Neptune, the symbol of Atlantean magic. To demonstrate the negation, the reader is asked to examine the symbolism of the serpent or the dragon under its several aspects. I'm going to put a pause right here, real quick. A lot of people equate, besides the fact of the draconians, the dragons, the stuff that controls Earth, whatever. For those of you who understand that Lucifer, son of the morning star, and equates Lucifer to a dragon. Now, in Pamela Ireland's channelings and a few other people who channel and have channeled Hillel, Hillel has come in with dragons. I was brought into densifying densities with dragons. Once you get out of 3D thinking, there's a lot to the dragons and this plane of existence. We have negated and spewed so much misinformation because you want to believe what a book says, but there's other books out there, and no, you can't. That's evil. But why don't you investigate? Look up Pamela Ireland's channeling of Hillel and how Hillel formed this world materialistically. It's very captivating. The book The Morning Star is a channeling, and there's a lot about that stuff in there too. I'm only bringing this up because we're at that crux point in society where draconians and the Draco constellation is the dragon constellation. And we defied it as evil because that's a negative polarized things that are happening to be inhabited here. That's not always the case. And the fact of the matter is, yes, some of their system is not of the good, but a lot of their system might be. And we're not giving it a chance because we've been brainwashed into thinking only this and this only. Just to put it out there. And I like how Blavatsky is really like, hey, take a step back for a minute. Let's look. Let's explore. The sidereal and cosmic glyphs. Every astronomer besides occultists and astrologers knows that figuratively the astral light, the Milky Way, and also the path of the sun to the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn, as well as the circles of the sidereal tropical year, were always called serpents in the allegorical and mystic phraseology of the adepts. This cosmically as well as metaphorically, Poseidon is a dragon. Shozar, called by the profane Neptune. The good and perfect serpent, the Messiah of the Sini, whose symbol is heaven in Draco. But one ought to discriminate between the characters of this symbol. For instance, Zoroastrian esotericism is identical with that of the Secret Doctrine. And when, as an example, we read in the Vindati Vendidad, however you pronounce that, we all know what I'm talking about. Complaints uttered against the serpent, whose bites have transformed the beautiful eternal spring of Ariana Vago, changing it into winter, generating disease and death at the same time as a mental and psychic consumption. Every occultist knows that the serpent alluded to the North Pole as also the pole of the heavens. The latter produces the seasons according to the angle at which it penetrates the center of the earth. The two axes were no more parallel. Hence, the eternal spring of Ariana Vago by the good river Daitya had disappeared, and the Aryan Magi had to immigrate to Sagdani. I don't know if I'm pronouncing any of these names properly. We know I butcher everything. Say the exoteric accounts, but the esoteric teaching states that the pole had passed through the equator and that the land of bliss of the fourth race, its inheritance from the third, had now become the region of desolation and woe. This alone ought to be an incontrovertible proof of the great antiquity of the Zoroastrian scriptures. The Neo-Aryans of the post-Diluvian age could, of course, hardly recognize the mountains on the summits of which their forefathers had met before the flood, and converse with the pure Yazeth, skipping there, celestial spirits and elementals, whose life and food they had once shared, as shown by Eckstein, a book in another language. The Vendidad, however you pronounce that, seems to point out a great change in the atmosphere of Central Asia. Strong volcanic eruptions and the collapse of a whole range of mountains in the neighborhood of the Karakum chain. The Egyptians, according to the Escubus, who for once and for a wonder wrote the truth, symbolized cosmos by a large fiery circle representing a serpent with a hawk's head lying across its diameter. Here we have the pole of the earth within the plane of the ecliptic, attended with all the fiery consequences that must arise from such a state of the heavens, when the whole zodiac in 25,000 odd years must have reddened with the solar blaze, and each sign must have been vertical to the polar region. Pause. We are at the end of a 25,000-year cycle, and a major and a minor as we speak. And we're seeing what? Volcanoes and floods and massive tornadoes. And we're going to see hurricanes and mudslides and floods and all kinds of upheaval because Gaia is ascending. And magnetically, we've been shifting. Meru, the abode of the gods, was placed, as before explained, in the North Pole, while Patala, the nether region, was supposed to lie in the south. As each symbol in esoteric philosophy has been 7 keys geographically, Meru and Patala have one significance and represent localities, while astronomically they have another and mean the 2 poles, which meanings end by their being often rendered in exoteric sectarianism, the mountain and the pit, or heaven and hell. If we hold at present only to the astronomical and geographical significance, it may be found that the ancients knew the typography and nature of the Arctic and Antarctic regions better than any of our modern astronomers. They had reasons, and good ones, for naming one the mountain and the other the pit. As the author just quoted half explains, Helion and Archron meant nearly the same. Helioon is the sun in the highest, Helios, the most high. The Akron is 32° above the pole and 32 below it, and the allegorical river being thus supposed to touch the northern horizon in the latitude of 32 degrees. The vast concave that is forever hidden from our sight and which surrounded the southern pole, being therefore called the pit, while observing toward the northern pole that a certain circuit in the heavens always appeared above the horizon, they called it the mountain. As Meru is the high abode of the gods, these were said to ascend and descend periodically, by which astronomically the zodiacal gods were meant, the passing of the original north pole of the earth to the south pole of the heaven. In that age, adds the author of the curious work, the Sphinxad, and its Urania's key to the revelations. Urania's. Urantia? At noon, the ecliptic would be parallel with the meridian, and part of the zodiac would descend from the North Pole to the north horizon, crossing the 8 coils of the serpent, 8 sidereal years, or over 200,000 solar years, which would seem like an imaginary ladder with 8 staves reaching from the earth up to the pole, the throne of Jove. Up this ladder, then the gods, the signs of the zodiac, ascend and descend. Jacob's ladder and the angels. It is more than 400,000 years since the zodiac formed the side of this ladder. This is an ingenious explanation, even if it is not altogether free from occult heresy. Yet it is neither the truth that many of the more scientific and especially theological character, as just said, the Christian Trinity was purely astronomical from its beginning, which made Rutilius say of thus who ephemerized it, Judea gens radix stulorium. But the profane, especially the Christian fanatics, ever in search of scientific corroboration for their dead letter texts, will persist in seeing in the celestial pole the true serpent of Genesis, Satan, the enemy of mankind, instead of what it is, a cosmic metaphor. When the gods are said to forsake the earth, it does not only mean the gods, protectors, and instructors, but also the minor gods, the regents of the zodiacal signs. Yet the former as actual and existing entities, which gave birth to, nursed, and instructed mankind in its early youth, appear in every scripture, in that of the Zoroastrians as much as the Hindu Gospels, Orsmond, or Ahura Mazda, the Lord of Wisdom, and is the synthesis of the Amashapens, Amashempta, immortal benefactors, the Word, however, or the Logos, and its 6th highest aspect in Mazdaism. These immortal benefactors are described in Zamyad Yashi as the Amasha Septas, the shining but efficacious eyes, great, helpful, imperishable, and pure, which are all 7 of like mind, like speech, all 7 doing alike, which are the creators and destroyers of the creatures of Ahura Mazda, their creators and overseers, their protectors and rulers. These few lines alone indicate the dual and even the triple character of the Amsha Pens, however you want to pronounce that, or are Daihan Kohans, or the serpents of wisdom. They are identical with and yet separate from the Orsman, Ahura Mazda. They are also the angels of the stars of the Christians, the star Zattas of the Zoroastrians, or again the 7 planets, including the sun, of every religion. The epithet, the shining, having efficacious eyes, proves it. This on the physical and sidereal planes, on the spiritual, they are the divine powers of Ahura Mazda. But on the astral or psychic plane, again, they are the builders, the watchers, and the Pitar, fathers. and the first preceptors of mankind. When mortals shall have become sufficiently spiritualized, there will be no more need of forcing them into a correct comprehension of ancient wisdom. Men will know then that they never yet was a great world reformer whose name has passed into our generation, who, as not a direct emanation of the Logos under whatever name known to us, as essential incarnation of one of the seven of the divine spirit who is sevenfold, and who had not appeared before during the past cycles. They will recognize then the cause which produces in history and chronology certain riddles of the ages. The reason why, for instance, it is impossible for them to assign any reliable date to Zoroaster, who is found multiplied by 12 and 14 in the Debastan, and why the Rishis and Manus are so mixed up in their numbers and individualities, why Krishna and Buddha speak of themselves as reincarnations. Krishna is identified with the Rishi Narayana, and Gautama gives a series of his previous births, and why the former, especially being the very supreme Brahma, is yet called Amama Swarta, maybe. Sorry, I'm butchering that. A part of a part only of the supreme on earth. Finally, why Osiris is a great god, and at the same time a prince on earth, who reappears in Thoth Hermes, and why Jesus, in Hebrew Joshua, of Nazareth, is recognized Kabbalistically in Yahshua, the son of Nun, as well as in other passages. The esoteric doctrine explains it by saying that each of these, as many others, had first appeared on earth as one, the seven powers of the Logos, individualized as a god or angel, messenger. Then mixed with matter, they have reappeared in turn as great sages, instructors who taught the fifth race after having instructed the two preceding races, have ruled during the divine dynasties, and had finally sacrificed themselves to be reborn under various circumstances for the good of mankind and for its salvation at certain critical points and periods, until in their last incarnations they had become truly only the parts of a part on earth, though de facto the one supreme in nature. This is the metaphysics of theogony. And as every power among the seven has once individualized in his charge one of the elements of creation and rules over it, hence the many meanings in every symbol, which, unless interpreted according to the esoteric methods, generally lead to an inextricable confusion. Does the Western Kabbalist, generally an opponent of the Eastern occultist, require a proof? Let him open Officius Levy's Histoire de la Magie and carefully examine his grand symbol Kabbalistic of the Zohar. He will find on the engraving given a white man standing erect on a black woman upside down, standing on her head, her legs passing under the extended arms of a male figure and protruding behind his shoulders, while their hands join at an angle on each side. Officius Levy makes it God and nature, God, light, mirrored inversely in nature and matter, darkness. Kabbalistically and symbolically, he is right, but only so far as emblematical cosmogony goes. Nor has he invented the symbol any more than the Kabbalists have. The two figures in white and black stone have existed in temples of Egypt from the immemorial, agreeable to tradition, and historically, even since the day of King Cambyses, who personally saw them. Therefore, the symbol must have been in existence since nearly 2,500 years ago. This, at the very least, for the Persian sovereign, who was a son of Cyrus the Great, succeeded his father in the year 529 BC. These figures were the two Kabri, personifying the opposite poles. Herodotus tells posterity that when Cambyses entered the temple of the Kabrim, he went into an inextinguishable fit of laughter on perceiving what he thought a man erect and a woman standing on top of her head before him. These were the poles, however, whose symbol was intended to commemorate the passing of the original North Pole of the earth to the South Pole of the heaven, as perceived by Mackey. But they represented also the poles inverted in consequence of the great inclination of the axis, bringing each time as a result of displacements of the oceans, the submersion of the polar lands, and the consequent upheaval of new continents in the equatorial regions, vice versa. These Kabrim were the deluge gods. This may help us to get the key of the seemingly hopeless confusion among the numbers of names and titles given to one of the same gods and classes of gods. Weber showed already at the beginning of this century the identity of the Korybanites, Kurits, Dioscuri, Enoctes, Magni. I feel like I'm reading a waspy. Penates, Manes, Lares, Titans, with the Cabrari. And we have shown that the latter were the same as the Manas and the Rishis and our Daihan Kohans, who incarnated in the elect of the third and fourth races. Thus, while in theogony, the Cabri Titans were seven great gods cosmically, and astronomically, the Titans were called Atlantes because perhaps, as Faber says, they were connected with the Atlas, the divine sun, and with the the deluge. But this, if true, is only the exoteric version. Esoterically, the meaning of their symbols depends on the appellation or title used. The seven mysterious, awe-inspiring great gods, the Dioscuri, the deities surrounded with the darkness of occult nature, become the ID, or daic finger, with the adept healer by metals. The true etymology of the name Lares, now signifying ghosts, must be sought in the Etruscan word Lars, the conductor, leader. There's a really long S name I am not butchering. Translates the word T as fire worshippers, and Tabur believes it's derived from Al-Urit, the god of fire. Both are right, as in both cases it is a reference to the sun, the highest god, toward whom the planetary gods gravitate astronomically and allegorically, and whom they worship. As Lars, they are truly the solar deities, though Faber's etymology, who says that Lar is a contraction of LR, the solar deity, is not very correct. They are the Lars, the conductors and leaders of men. As Alt-T, they were the seven planets astronomically. And as Lars, the regents of the same, are protectors and rulers mystically. For a purpose of esoteric and phallic worship, as also cosmically, they were the Cabri, their attributes being recognized in these two capacities by the name of the temples to which they respectively belong, and those of their priests. They all belonged, however, to the cemetery creative and informing groups of Daihan Kohans. The Sabins, who worship the regents of the seven planets, as the Hindus do their rishis, held Seth and his son Hermes, Enoch or Enos, as the highest among the planetary gods. Seth and Enos were borrowed from the Sabins and then disfigured by the Jews exoterically. but the truth can still be traced about them even in Genesis. Seth is the progenitor of those early men of the third race in whom the planetary angels had incarnated. Dayan Kohan himself, who belonged to the informing gods, and Enos, Hanok, Enoch, or Hermes, was said to be his son because it was a generic name for all the early seers, Enochian, thence the worship. The Arabic writer Suyuti says that the earliest records mention Seth or Set as the founder of Sabianism, and therefore that the pyramids which embody the planetary systems were regarded as the place of sepulcher of both Seth and Idris, Hermes, or Enoch. That thither Sabins proceeded on pilgrimage and chanted prayers 7 times a day, turning to the north, the Mount Meru, Cave, Olympus, etc. Abd Altif says curious things about the Sabins and their books. So does Eden Ahmed ben Yahya, who wrote 200 years later, while the latter maintains that each pyramid was consecrated to a star regent rather. Al-If assures us that if he had read in Sabaean books that the one pyramid was a tomb of Agamemnon and the other of Hermes, Agamemnon was none other than Seth, and according to some writers, Hermes was his son, adds Mr. Stalland Wake in the Great Pyramid. Thus, while in Samothrace and oldest Egyptian temples, they were the great cosmic gods, the 7 and the 49 sacred fires. In the Grecian frames, their rites became mostly phallic, therefore to the profane obscene. In the latter case, there were 3 and 4 or 7, the male and female principles. The divisions showing why some classical writers held that they were only 3, while others named 4, and those were Cabri, Exeros, in female aspect, Demeter, Axiochristia, Phosphorone, Axiochiros, Pluto or Hades, and Cadmos or Cadmilos, Hermes, not the phallic Hermes mentioned by Herodotus. But he of the sacred legend explained only during the Samothracian mysteries. This identification due, according to the scholast Apollyon, to an indiscretion of Menelaus is none at all, as names alone do not reveal much. Sorry if you're hearing fireworks in the background. There were still others again who maintained, being as right in their way, that they were only 2 Cabri. These were esoterically the 2 Dioscuri, Castor and Pollux, and exoterically Jupiter and Bacchus. The 2 personified in terrestrial poles, geodesically, the terrestrial and the pole of the heavens, astronomically, as also the physical and the spiritual man, the story of Semiel and Jupiter and the birth of Bacchus, the bimatter, with all the circumstances attending to it, needs only to be read esoterically to understand the allegory. The parts played in the event by the fire, water, earth, in the many versions, will show how the father of the gods and the merry god of wine were also made to personify the 2 terrestrial poles. The telluric, metalline, magnetic, electric, and fiery elements are all so many allusions and references to the cosmic and astronomic character of the Diluvian tragedy. In astronomy, the poles are indeed the heavy measure, and so are the Cabri Discuri, as well be shown the Cabrari Titans, to whom Diodorus ascribes the invention of fire and the art of manufacturing iron. Moreover, Pausanias shows that the original Hebraic deity was Prometheus. Boom, boom, boom. But the fact that astronomically the Titans Cabrium were also the generators and regulators of the seasons and cosmically the great volcanic energies, the gods presiding over all the metals and terrestrial works, does not prevent them from being, in their original divine characters, the beneficent entities who, symbolized in Prometheus, brought light to the world and endowed humanity with the intellect and reason. They are preeminently in every theogony, especially in the Hindu, the sacred divine fires, 3, 7, or 49, according as the allegory demands it. Their very names prove it, as they are the Agni Prutra, sons of fire, in India, and the genii of the fire under numerous names in Greece and elsewhere. Welker, Murray, and now De Charme. So the name Cabrion, meaning the powerful through fire, from the Greek word cow, to burn. The Semitic Cabrim, the powerful, the mighty, and the great, answering to the Greek, however that is, I don't know how Greek, are later epithets. They were universally worshipped, and their origin is lost in the night of time. Yet whether propitiated in Phrygia, Phoenicia, and Trad, Thrace, Egypt, Lemnos, or Sicily, their cult was always connected with fire. Their temples ever built in the most volcanic localities, and in exoteric worship, they belonged to the Chthonian divinities. Therefore, Christianity has made of them infernal gods. They are truly the great beneficent and powerful gods, as Cassius Hermon calls them. At Thebes, Kor and Demeter, the Cabrim, had a sanctuary. And at Memphis, the Cabri had a temple so sacred that none excepting the priests were suffered to enter their holy precincts. But we must not lose sight at the same time at the fact that the title of Cabri was a generic one, that the Cabri, the mighty gods as well as mortals, were both sexes, as also terrestrial, celestial, and cosmic, that while in their later capacities of the rulers of sidereal and terrestrial powers, a purely geological phenomenon, as it is now regarded, was symbolized in the persons of those rulers, they were also in the beginning of times the rulers of mankind. When incarnated as kings of the divine dynasties, they gave the first impulse to civilization and directed the mind with which they had endued men to the invention and perfection of all the arts and sciences. Thus the Cabri are said to have appeared as the benefactors of men, and as such they live for ages in the memories of nations. To them the Cabri, or Titans, is ascribed to the invention of letters, or the alphabet and language of the gods, of laws and legislature, of architecture, as of the various modes of magic so called, and of the medicinal use of plants. Hermes, Orpheus, Cadmus, Caduceus, Asclepius, all those demigods and heroes to whom is ascribed the revelation of science to men, and whom Bryant, Faber, Bishop, Cumberland, and so many other Christian writers, too zealous for plain truth, would force prosperity to see only pagan copies of one in sole prototype named Noah, or all generic names. It is the Cabri who are also accredited with having revealed by producing corn or wheat the great boon of agriculture. What Isis, Osiris, the once living Cabria, was done in Egypt, the Ceres is said to have done in Sicily. They all belong in one class. That the serpents were ever the emblems of wisdom and prudence is again shown by the Caduceus of Mercury, one with Thoth, the god of wisdom, with Hermes, and so on. The two serpents entwined around the rod are phallic symbols of Jupiter and other gods who transform themselves into snakes for purposes of seducing goddesses, but only in the unclean fancies of profane symbologists. The serpent has ever been the symbol of the adept and of the powers of immortality and divine knowledge. Mercury, in his pseudo pompic character, conducting and guiding with the caduceus the souls of the dead to Hades, and even rising the dead to life with it, is simply a very transparent allegory. It shows the dual power of the secret wisdom, the black and the white magic. It shows the personified wisdom guiding the soul after death and its power to call to life that which is dead. A very deep metaphor in one thinks over its meaning. Every people of antiquity reverenced this symbol, with the exception of Christians, who chose to forget the brazen serpent of Moses and even implied the acknowledgement of a great wisdom and prudence of the serpent by Jesus himself. But be ye wise as serpent and harmless as doves. The Chinese, one of the oldest nations of our fifth race, made it the emblem of their emperors, who are thus the degenerate successors of the serpents or initiates who ruled the early races of the fifth humanity. The emperor's throne is the dragon's seat, and his dresses of state are embroidered with the likeness of the dragon. The aphorisms in the oldest books of China, moreover, say plainly that the dragon is a human, albeit divine being. Speaking of the yellow dragon, the chief of the others, the Twang Yin Tu, say his wisdom and virtue are unfathomable. He does not go in company and does not live in herds. He is aesthetic. He wanders in the wilds beyond the heavens. He goes and comes, fulfilling the decree, karma. At the proper seasons, if there is perfection, he comes forth. If not, he remains invisible. And Khufu, too, is made to say by Lulan, the dragon feeds in the pure water of wisdom and sports in the clear waters of life. I'm going to leave it here because the next part is our divine instructors and holy. We'll see what happens there. There was a lot of fireworks and big bangs and lots of noises, so I do apologize. And again, I can't project a lot of things out of my mouth. Gotta love that. And we got dyslexia working on top of that. So I want to thank you all for coming along the ride with me. Hopefully this comes out on normal time next week. Like, life isn't going to suck so bad. I'm hoping I can pay my bills this month. If you would like to help, all the descriptions and ways to do so is in the link section under the video. All is such appreciated. You guys have kept me afloat and keeps me going and motivated to not transcend just yet. So thank you all. Sending each and every one of you love, light, compassion, grace, shielding, and protective energy. Please go within. Be the soldier. Be the lighthouse. Seed your truths. Light that path forward. And I want to wish everybody in America a happy 4th of July. I don't know if it's a happy one or a good one. We'll see. But thank you to all the people in our known history that sacrificed themselves to keep us free. And we're not really free. Or it's a state of existence that you choose to have. But until the next time, guys, thank you for watching. Please don't forget to hit that like, and bye for now.